Welcome to Garden Grounds. Just doing a quick sound check. Let me know if you can hear my voice and see my garden, and we will get started. All right, the microphone is on. Let me just pop out the chat. Today's Garden Grounds is really just a Q&A, really. Do this every second and fourth Thursday of the month at 11 a.m. This is public. Anybody who subscribes to my channel can ask a question, ask whatever you'd like with respect to gardening. The light subject today is going to be what can you plant in June and July? Direct seeding, actually. And go ahead, throw your question into the chat and make sure you put question next to it so that I can pick it out of the chat. Having trouble getting the chat actually up here. Hold on. Okay, so we're good to go. And it looks like the chat is a little problematic. I'm going to try and do it again. And please, if you can now see me and hear me, let me know so that I can get rolling here. And it does get busy, so when you do put out a question, please put question in front of it so I can pick it out. All right, we are good to go. So, direct seeding. I'm in Maryland Zone 7. Today's going to be 90 degrees. I have to water the garden now completely. When the temperatures get into the 90s, your soil, the top 4 inches, really warms up. So when you're seeding your summer crops, they germinate really quickly, they grow really quickly. So they're going to grow faster than you might think because we're into basically the summer. What you can't plant right now in June in Maryland type zones are the cool weather crops. It's just getting too warm soil wise. So a lot of those crops are going to bolt and flower, and we're going to have to plant those again, for the fall. So for the summer crops, probably the easiest thing to say is what you can't direct seed. You can't direct seed peppers here or eggplant. They're just going to take a long time to grow. You could give it a try. It's going to stay warm here in Maryland until really the end of September for the warm crops, maybe even into October. So we have a good 100 days to grow. So tomato plants, you can definitely direct seed tomatoes right now. Determinate variety tomatoes get to a set height, they flower, they fruit over a short span. They can mature anywhere in 60 to 70 days. So a lot of times we forget and think that we can only do tomato plants as transplants. So you can do really any determinate variety transplant now, and you can do it again in early July if you want. Cherry tomatoes, indeterminate, you can direct seed those. And even some indeterminate varieties that mature within, say, under 90 days can be planted, direct seeded. They grow extremely fast. So once they germinate, they really accelerate in their growth. So they're, maturing faster than what it says usually on the seed pack. So, give it an experiment. Try putting in a tomato plant now, direct seed. Watch how quickly it grows and catches up to your other plants. So tomatoes are definitely something that we think that we can't direct seed, but you can. And again, I'm in Maryland Zone 7, so similar areas. Let me grab some questions and then we'll go down a list of what you can direct seed now. And if you have a question, just throw it out there with respect to, can I put it in the ground and will it germinate and mature in time before the frost and cold comes? All right, so we got questions. What liquid fertilizer can I use for flowering tomato and pepper plants? Good question. Any of them. So we get a little bit distracted and overwhelmed with information that at a specific time for a specific plant with specific flowers and specific fruit, that we need a specific water-soluble fertilizer. The truth is that organic compost, any compost, well below a 111 NP and K, low amounts. Plants have been growing in that for millions of years. They do their thing, they do well. Now, I understand that if you have something that's a little bit more geared to flowering and fruiting, maybe you get more tomatoes. I have not found that to be true. So any fertilizer that has NP and K represented will work as your water-soluble fertilizer. Fertilizers that might be a little bit higher in phosphorus and potassium and a little bit lower in nitrogen would be great, but it's really hard to find a water-soluble fertilizer for that. There is a product called Alaska More Bloom. I don't necessarily recommend it, but it's a 0-10-10 water-soluble fertilizer. And to answer your question, that's what I would select. It has no nitrogen, so it's not going to really supply leaf growth or nutrients for leaf growth, but nitrogen is used throughout the whole system of a plant. It's going to get potassium, it's going to get phosphorus, and that is supposed to help with the flowering and fruiting. I've just not found it to be significant. So the chemical type fertilizers, everything is a chemical, but for instance, the human-made fertilizers are usually like 24-8-16, way too high in nitrogen. Cut it in half, that's a fine water soluble. I am affiliated with AgroThrive. AgroThrive has a basic water soluble. Highly recommend them for organic fertilizers. Works really well. And they have one for blooming, which is a little bit higher in the phosphorus and potassium. You can find the link for AgroThrive in my video descriptions on any of my videos. But I just want to be clear that I don't want to push you towards something I'm affiliated with or say you need a specialized product. You just need to supply your plants slow and steady NP and K, and they're going to do their thing. I've just not noticed a significant difference in the number of flowers or the number of fruit or anything like that. And the reason I took actually so long to answer that, one of my goals for my channel is helping new gardeners not be overwhelmed and helping, gardeners that have been doing this for a while not overspend on their money or overuse their time, in that we have to regiment in specific fertilizers at certain times and stuff like that. You really don't. You could just use compost. Your garden's going to do okay. All right, so it does get busy. If I miss your question, please just put it back out there again. MC, slugs are decimating my pepper leaves. Will they survive? Yes, yes, they will survive. And this is a great time to use a water-soluble fertilizer, higher in nitrogen. Give them a big drink. That will get them back on track. To control slugs and snails, I use the baits that you can buy, Corey brand, I think, or Corey Slug and Bait Killer. Doesn't matter what they are. Look for the ingredient. Should be iron phosphate or sulfur in a bait. That really controls snails and slugs. That will take care of the problem. Can I plant brassicas now in Zone B? Good question. You can plant, in my opinion, the leafy brassicas, collards, and kale. You could also do Swiss chard. They will manage through the summer pretty well. Collards may flower. Kale probably won't. But if you try and do things like broccoli, cauliflower, they're just not going to form a nice head. You'll get leaves, and you can eat the leaves, but you're not going to get a head forming. It just gets too warm. Can you explain how to properly harvest lettuce seeds and what to do to prevent cross-pollination? So actually, I've not necessarily harvested lettuce seeds. I don't know if they need to be pollinated or if they're self-pollinating. Like for instance, tomatoes are self-pollinating. So when your tomatoes flower, it's really hard to get across unless something happens perfectly at the right time. The only way to do it, since I'm not sure if they are self-pollinating or not, is to have good amount of space between your plants. And that could be, if you don't want any contamination, it's probably going to have to be like a good, seriously, like 20 yards, because insects fly around. You're going to wait till the pods totally dry. You're going to harvest on a dry day and you're going to pick the pods. They should be thoroughly dry and brown. The outside should be crispy. You break them open, the seeds are there. And that's the only real way to ensure you get a good seed. If you pick them too soon, they usually feed off of the pod or whatever you pick, and they may be okay, but you definitely want them to dry out. So if you do throw in a super chat, I will answer that with priority. So we have one. I started asparagus from seed, and thank you very much, Philly Passport. I started asparagus from seed. If I had to plant in containers, what size would you recommend? Good question. Let me just think a second. Theoretically, asparagus can be grown in any container. It's really winter hardy. In Maryland, it's going to survive. So we get down to maybe into the teens for freezes. This year we got down to like 8 degrees. But asparagus is a big plant. And even though you could have it survive in a small plant, you want to be able to feed and water it without having to be out there 2 or 3 times a day. And that's the biggest issue with container gardening. How big is your plant come midsummer? And asparagus gets like 4 feet tall. You let the spears go, you stop harvesting in May, you let them go, the plant will get a good 4 feet tall, maybe taller, and really fern out. And it's drawing in all the energy for that year in June, July, August, and putting it into the roots. You get bigger roots, then you get the asparagus spears. To answer your question, I would go with definitely at least a 20-gallon fabric pot with one plant. That would be the smallest I would go. But I would try and get to, like a 40-gallon container. I can't convert that to liters in my head, sorry. But, 20 gallons to 40 gallons, you want something that's a good size. You're thinking about how big is this plant going to be middle of July, and it's going to be big. All right. So again, this is Garden Grounds. I do this every second and fourth Thursday at 11 a.m. and it's just a live mentoring Q&A. I also have perk memberships for $3.99. You can join my perk memberships, and I do this format 4 times, at least probably 5 times a month for 1 hour. It's a smaller group. It's a great group. If you look at the people that have circles and stars next to their names, they are perk members, and this is the format that we do. And it's, it's nice. It's smaller. We talk for about an hour, and you can really use it as a time to ask questions from me and also the other gardeners about, how to get your garden on track or what to do in your garden for that week. So it's a nice way to just kind of get some mentoring from peers and for myself. All right. Question, tomato fungus. Can just the leaf with fungus be trimmed or the whole stem baking soda spray? Can this be sprayed in full sun in a heated day? Other plant sprays. So when you have a leaf fungus on your tomato plants, or generally on any plant, if you see it on a leaf, and it's usually a brown circle with a yellow ring around it, that means you have an active fungus. Spores are spread through that whole space. So you would really not just want to take part of the leaf, you would want to take the whole leaf if you want to trim it back. Baking soda can be sprayed in full sun, but you try not to do that because water droplets form. The baking soda can kind of concentrate. It can damage your leaves. So you really want to spray your sprays early morning, later afternoon. You want it to be a nice light coat on the leaf, and you want it to dry, not really slowly, but you just want to let it dry evenly so that it coats the leaf. Baking soda spray increases, I always have to think, increases the pH. Let me get it right. Yeah, increases the pH and increases alkalinity. And that makes it inhospitable for that fungus to multiply and reproduce, and it manages it. I don't know what your question is with other plants to spray, if you want to clarify that. Hot full sun window boxes in 6A similar to you. What foods can I direct sow now in those window boxes? Thanks. So they're going to get hot, and you're going to have enough soil in there to really manage the growth. I think you could do bush beans for sure. I'm trying to think of what other smaller plants. My concern is that anything that's going to grow above a foot, full sun heat, is going to dry out really quick. And I would probably go with bush beans. If anybody else has any other ideas of what that person, of what Jay can plant, that would be great. All right, so other things that you can plant. So we kind of get our mindset, that we transplant stuff or we direct seed in May, and then we try and take care of sickly plants. The plants get beat up from diseases, insects, beating sun, they dry out. You can replant. You can definitely direct seed now. Cucumbers, I'll be doing that this week. Zucchini, squash. I will continue to do that into July. And what you're doing is and I have cucumber plants that are as tall as my shoulders now. When they get beat up and die off, I have new baby plants kind of breaking the surface and growing. When you do that with zucchini, like I have a mature zucchini plant now that's flowering, it may get the vine borer, it may get a disease. If that plant dies off, I have other plants growing. And again, remember, they grow much more quickly when the warmth is here. Smaller plants tend to be less affected by diseases and insects for whatever reason. So as that one plant dies off of the cukes, the squash, zucchini, the new plants come, and that's how I succession plant really through June and July, and even sometimes in August. They will continue to grow. Definitely do bush beans, pole beans, okra, can all be direct seeded. You can actually, in a shadier part of your garden, direct seed carrots right now. People associate them more with the cool weather, but they can go into a shadier part of the garden. I'm trying to go down the list in my head of what I've planted. Winter squash, like acorn squash, Hubbard, butternut, spaghetti. These are squash that when you pick them, they can store for kind of weeks, if not months, on your counter or something. They can all be planted now. Cantaloupe, watermelon, pumpkins can all go in. It's just really a good time to plant just about anything that's associated with a warm weather crop, direct seed wise. These are all going to accelerate and grow well. Peppers you might be able to get by with, but they do tend to stay small. You might get a small harvest. I just found it's not worth it. Eggplant can take off, but again, they're like peppers. You might get some eggplant, but not that many. Tomatillos, related to the tomato, direct seed those now. It's hard to find them in transplants. They grow extremely fast. They would be perfect to grow. Old Dominion, a perk member, just watched your compost video. We had a bad infestation of Asian jumping worms and can't let any worms get into our compost now. Any advice on your build for a raised compost bin? So I'm not sure how Asian jumping worms work. If they got to your compost, they're probably in your soil, so they're going to be present. But I understand you don't want them to have a great place to live and really multiply. And I don't know if they climb. If they don't climb up things, you could probably just build a platform, a good foot off the ground and compost that way. You could use compost bins like you're saying here. I have a couple of those, and I built a stand that was about 3 feet tall to fit the compost tumbler, and I use a tumbler. You could put bins on there that maybe doesn't tumble. But if you're going to go through that work, I would probably look at a circular compost tumbler that's kind of big. You can close the top. You can actually keep it on the ground because it's a big cylinder and you put a lid over it. And it makes compost a little bit more quickly because you can spin it, rotate it, and kind of help the heating process. Question, I see red ant-like tiny bugs on my hollyhocks leaves. Some of them are eating the leaves. What do you use? So diatomaceous earth is really more for jointed insects like beetles. It's silica from microscopic sea organisms from millions of years ago that die. They leave these sharp shells, they get dug up, and we toss them onto the plants. So your bugs probably just don't get affected by DE. It's a dust, but it's just silica. An oil and soap spray may work on them. I don't know. You can check out my videos, but just a soapy oil spray could work. That's pretty generic organic. I sell peppermint oil at my seed shop. Peppermint oil has been great on my cucumbers and beans for managing spider mites and even the Mexican bean beetle. The oil, the peppermint oil, really irritates them. May kill them off. They're too small for me to see, but it controls them. The other thing is that you could go to a non-organic treatment like, since you're not eating it, like 7 spray, and that's pretty effective at wiping out most insects. If you are spraying it, you want to spray early in the morning or late in the evening so you're not killing off good insects. But any spray, any insect dust, organic, not organic, combination of both, will indiscriminately kill insects. It can't tell the difference. Question: if you have a determinate tomato that's growing, can you take a cut from it and regrow it in a different spot? You can. Any tomato plant that grows a sucker out of the joint, you can, cut maybe at 3 inches or so, put it in water, it'll root out. Determinate variety tomatoes actually don't necessarily die off. They die back and then they regrow. So, but they can take a long time from producing, then dying and regrowing. It's just easier to have transplants to put into the ground for them. But you could do that. If I cut the runners for my strawberry, does it start flowering again? Not really. And again, I saw your question, but put question in front of your question so that I can pull it out. Strawberry plants are either the June bearing or ever bearing, meaning they flower and produce all at once, like around June, or they produce all at once, like say June, but also continue to produce, not as much, through July and August and such like that. So there's really 2 types. Weather conditions, as they change, sometimes you get another flowering in September, October, and you can get fruit then. I have mixed berries, strawberries in my garden, but cutting the runners doesn't force more flowers and more berries. Maybe slightly, but not significant in a way that you would think or that you want. Advice on how to make a garden look more presentable, like the blogs and YouTube videos. Plants are healthy. I mulch with grass clippings. Just wish garden looked nicer. So, I have fixed my garden up in the past and try and make it look like home and garden TV. But I found that was kind of discouraging to people because it's not real. Gardens are always in transition. They always don't look perfect. The best way to make a garden look better, if you're looking for something, is using, I think, raised beds and mulch in between the paths. And that keeps the path, one color mulch, nice and clean. You got nice edges on your box. You've got mulch in the boxes and the raised beds. And then you've got your trellises set up, and it can be very nice, Sometimes people do stuff more geometrically and keep symmetry with how they're putting their boxes down. It all just depends on what you think looks good, to be honest with you. But it's usually mulch and it's usually raised beds that frame out the growing area. When you just have earth rows, they shift and change, and I think it looks good, but it's not as clean as maybe, on a TV show. And I want to welcome Robin L. I think you just joined the perk membership. I appreciate that. All right, let me find out where I am. Question. Maryland Zone 7, and I have a great sun from late April till July. In August, the trees model the sun. Will my watermelon and other sun-loving veggies be okay? Depends on how much it cuts back. But with time, I've found that plants can manage, as long as they're getting 6 hours of direct sun, pretty well. So if your plants are pretty well established, the soil's pretty good, they're still getting sun on them, they're going to be okay. One of the things that I do come July is I put shade cloth down, because my garden in certain areas gets like 10 hours of direct sun. It beats up the cucumbers, it heats up the soil, it slows down production of the tomatoes and peppers. So a 50% shade cloth reduces the sun by 50%, cools the soil, even though I'm using mulch in the soil, and it helps these plants stay greener and continue to produce. Because when the soil gets really warm and it's baking, that top couple of inches is like, 100 plus degrees when the sun is baking down and it's a 90-degree day. These plants go into hibernation mode and they shut down for survival. So they will drop flowers, they will drop fruit, they will look beat up. It's hard to stay up on the watering. They use the surface roots to really pull in nutrients from everywhere. Even though it's watered pretty well and you've got deep roots keeping the plant alive, they really thrive off of the top couple inches of the soil. I'm getting lots of cucumber flowers, but worms are getting to them. What can I use to help? That is a tough question. So if they're worms, like they're caterpillars and you see them, you're probably going to have to use an insect dust. Again, they both kill good insects, so it doesn't matter if you pick spinosad, which is organic, like Captain Jack's, or 7 dust. You could use neem oil spray. When worms eat the neem oil, it shuts down their system and kills them. I sell that at my shop. Neem oil is probably the least impactful to the non-chewing beneficial insects, like bees coming and going to the flower. As long as you don't contact them with the neem oil while it's wet and coming out of the sprayer, they're going to be fine. But if you're putting down any insect dust or spray, it could harm the beneficial flying insects. But if you're sure that they're worms and they're not snails or slugs, you're going to have to pick a insect dust or spray and cover the plants. I'm not familiar with something that just eats the flowers, but if you've got it and you see it, then I consider that an infestation and you have to use something a little bit stronger. What type of mulch should be used in the vegetable garden? You can use any mulch in your garden. Grass, fresh grass, a couple inches, let it dry, turn brown, put more on later. Leaves, you can use straw, you can use shredded hardwood, that's what I prefer. You could use wood chips. Wood chips are something that are like, big. Shredded hardwood is more like your hair, a little bit thicker, and it's little pieces of wood, but it's shredded down and it decays really quickly. You don't want to mix wood product into that top 4 inches of your soil, because it has to decay and it will take nutrients from your plants. However, anything on the surface of the soil is fine. If you want to plant seeds, you would have to move the mulch to the side. Grass clippings are great to use. Leaves are great to use. They decay quickly. The worms like them. Microbes like them. You can use that. There's a lot of different things you can use. Question, I missed it. What's a jumping worm? Also, any suggestions on liquid fertilizer for fruiting plants? So I don't know if you were the fruiting plant person that asked earlier. Jumping worm is a variety of worm that doesn't do anything beneficial for the soil. It just eats everything, is my understanding. So they're not leaving castings or anything good like that. They're just taking the nutrients. I was saying for fruiting for tomatoes and peppers, that you don't really need a specialized water-soluble fertilizer. Anyone's going to work. I'm affiliated with AgroThrive. They have a bloom fertilizer. They have really 2 types. You would get the second type that's higher in phosphorus and potassium. Find that in my video descriptions. That is geared to help with flowering. There's also Alaska brand. I'm not affiliated with them. That's a 0, no nitrogen, 10-10 NP and K, and that's to help with blooming. I have found that there's not a significant difference. I've tried using Alaska before. The 0-10-10, the More Bloom product is the Alaska brand. It's called More Bloom. Didn't find anything significant. Just consistent NP and K in your soil is what's going to keep your plants thriving. I don't mulch my GreenStalk now. I have done it before, and it does help keep moisture in the pockets, but I would use the shredded hardwood for that. And I would, you know, I find any container in the GreenStalk garden vertical towers, or like any container, when it gets to be a hot summer and your plants are big, you just have to get in there and water it regularly. So getting back to, we're at 11:31, I'll go to about 11:45. For direct seeding in June and July, you can keep the main crops going. Cucumbers, zucchini, squash, like every 3 or 4 weeks, really through the summer into July. You can definitely do indeterminate tomatoes, determinate variety tomatoes, probably indeterminate tomatoes, just depends on where you live. Give it a try. Okra can go in. Your pumpkins, cantaloupe, melons can go in. Your winter squashes can go in. For herbs, you can continue to drop basil seeds. Like my basil, I have it in containers that it's pretty big. And then I put some transplants in. I will be putting out some basil seeds in the shadier parts of my garden now. That's how you can get continuous basil for the whole summer. Aside from that kind of deadheading it and managing the other plants, put them in a cooler place. You can put dill down now. You can put in parsley now. You could even try and squeeze in leeks, which take about 100 days, but they do manage the cold weather. So you could put leeks in now, and that's an alternative to onions. You can't put onions in now. We've missed that boat. You can't put in garlic, really. We've missed that boat. At this point, Maryland Zone 7, I have a good 90 to 100 days of really warm weather and probably longer. I can pretty much direct seed anything. What I want to kind of stick today's live is that you don't have to make these as transplants. Just find the space, put them in the ground where you want, keep them watered, water every other day, every 2 days, it's going to be hot. Let them get established. But they're going to germinate really quickly and they're going to grow incredibly fast. And that's what usually surprises gardeners, how quickly. Like if I put in a zucchini seed now, germinates probably in 3 to 5 days. That plant can be producing from germination in 35 days. It's really that fast. All right, let me go back, find out where we are here. And again, I'll be on for about another 15 minutes. If you want to do a super chat donation, I will answer that question with priority. If you like this format, I have perk memberships. You can join that from my YouTube page, $3.99 a month. And I do this format about 5 times a month for an hour. Robin and dark blue circle, I know that you just joined. Planted strawberries with crowns just above the soil back in mid-May in a GreenStalk type tower, living in a hot desert, so I water frequently. When should I start seeing growth? Mid-May, let's just say the 15th, you should probably have seen growth by now. So if you bought crowns and they were like in a bag or off the shelf, sometimes they're not the best. If you bought crowns from like a nursery and they ship them to you and they're moist and they look alive, those are usually fine. So I'm not sure which ones you planted. Crowns that aren't well taken care of sometimes have dried out and have died. And I'm going with that if you've put a bunch in there, usually something survives. So as long as you're keeping it watered, if you're not seeing any growth, really in about 7 to 10 days, I don't think that they were viable. Strawberries take off pretty quickly, but I would give them another 7 to 10 days. Do you plant Brussels sprout seeds outdoors or start indoors? So my Brussels sprouts, when I grew them, I would start them indoors in like February and put them out in March. But the weather here is weird, so the Brussels weren't really forming, and then when they get into the heat, they get a kind of spicy, don't taste as great. But I was doing transplants. Theoretically, you could put Brussels sprout seeds in now, they're going to grow and establish, and then they're going to really start forming as it cools down. So it's one of those crops that take a long time to form. For instance, it's too early yet, but cauliflower and broccoli and other brassicas, I will plant direct seed in August because they're going to grow when it's warm, they're going to accelerate, and then the cool weather comes, and then they're going to form nicely. Just depends on what you want to do. And I apologize for YouTube. Finding the join button and joining perk memberships is really difficult if you're on a phone or, versus a laptop or a desktop, but it's definitely there. It's a join button, and it's, it takes a little bit of looking around, but it's not, something that I wish it was easier. Like, sometimes at the video that you're watching, right next to it is the join button shows up. Thank you, Philly, for joining. Success. All right. All right, let me find out where I left off. Dorothy, lantern beetles are coming in. Will 8 work on them? I don't usually use insecticides, but I don't want them to proliferate and draw more in. So I'm not a 100% organic gardener. I fully believe compost is the heart of organic gardening. I have tons of compost. When it comes to insects, lantern beetles are coming in. Will 8 work? Don't typically use insecticides. I'm with you. I use insecticides, stronger stuff, when I have an infestation. So I'm actually spraying my muscadines, where you have the little nymph lantern flies, with 7, which is, 8 is just kind of a different version. Yes, it will work, and it kills them, and it's effective. 2 years ago, I think they rolled into my garden, maybe 3. I had thousands everywhere, and they just wrecked trees and grapes and muscadines, and now I don't mess with them. I'm perfectly fine. Hit them with the insecticide that's strong, knock them back, and go on my organic ways in different places in my garden. Can I leave 2 pumpkin plants growing next to each other in a ground bed, or should I thin one out? No, you can do 2. I mean, 1 or 2 pumpkins, 1 or 2 melons, 2 cantaloupe, that's fine. If in the ground they get a bigger place to grow their roots, do better, that's great. If the pumpkins can kind of go in different directions, perfectly fine. The cool thing about pumpkins and a lot of your vining crops that sprawl across the ground is they will put roots down in different places along the vine and anchor and establish, and that's why it doesn't matter that you have 2 next to each other. But it's really more dependent on you, really on your preference with pests and disease. The more you pack plants in there, the greater chance that an infestation or diseases take hold. Doesn't mean you made a mistake. Diseases are around, insects are around. They're still going to come to super maintained gardens. It just depends on how often you can check on them to manage it. Earwigs are taking over. I find them in my compost. They're eating my bell peppers, salvia, and other things. Also have slugs and snails, but not as much as earwigs. So slug and snails, I use iron phosphate baits or sulfur baits. They work really well. People have told me the iron phosphate slug baits, sulfur baits work on the roly-poly bugs. Don't know if they work with the earwigs. Earwigs can be devastating. You can try something like neem oil because they're eating. If they eat it, the azadirachtin in neem oil kills them off, but they have to eat the plants for it to get inside them, so you get more days of devastation. That might be a case where you use an insect dust. Don't know how well spinosad works on them. That's organic, but again, it will kill any insect. Well, it'll kill a lot of different insects. Or the 7 dust will work. If you dust around your compost pile, they crawl through it, it kills them off. I'm personally okay. I've done a lot of research with it and using it. I feel it breaks down and goes away and doesn't harm my garden. But I understand, like some people just want to use organic chemicals. So try spinosad dust or try neem oil. All right, where are we at? 11:40. Trying to just find out where I am here. All right, and again, if I missed your question, please put it back out there. Aphids are attacking my Brussels sprouts. I keep blasting them with water. What else can I do? Aphids are soft-bodied insects, so you can make a soapy water spray with some oil in it. Any oil works. It doesn't have to be neem oil because they're not going to eat it. You're going to use the oil to actually smother the insects, so you could use any oil in your kitchen, really. Always test spray if you make something new. Spray some of the leaves, see if it affects the plants. Wait 48 hours. But you can do a soapy water spray, see if that works. The soap contacts the aphid, messes up like a waxy, oily coat they have on them, dehydrates them. The oil in soap works really well. The soap does what I just said. The oil covers the pores and suffocates them. Philly, I recently purchased 2 grapevines. The vines I bought are capable of being potted. What's the best type of soil to use for grapes? I'm good with making my own soil. So the thing about grapes is they send down a vine or a root that goes like at least 4 feet into the earth, and it mines all of the nutrients and stuff it needs. So if it says you can grow it in a container, I'm sure it's true. And you just want to make sure the temperatures manage well in your area and the grapevine survives. But that being said, let's say the grape does great. You're going to have to keep it well fed with a water-soluble fertilizer because it's only getting nutrients out of the container. It's not getting those deep roots. So keep that in mind. It's got to be fed regularly. The soil really doesn't matter. They grow in just about anything. Like mine is planted in my clay soil, sends down that big root. I would just be going for something that holds moisture, pH around 6. You don't really have to measure it. I mean, it can be made with peat moss and your native soil. It's really going to grow anything. It can be a little bit heavier, like you don't want it super loose or fluffy, but a heavier, I think, container mix with more earth, silt, clay, sand in it is probably better for grapevines. But they're not really, they don't care that much. It's just in a container. You're going to have to keep them watered and fed well. I had a small area of my potatoes droop after heavy rain. It's been 4 days and they're still drooping but not wilted. They could be drooping from excessive water. And maybe they just kind of got messed up with the air pockets and there was too much water. But there's nothing you can do. So you know that it's not from underwatering. Underwatering will droop your potatoes and it really reduces the way the potatoes are formed. But if you know they've had plenty of water and they're drooping, all you can really do is let them go. Now, it's June. A lot of potatoes are ready in 70, 80 days. Depending on when you planted them, they may be finishing up because when a potato is done, the greenery turns yellow, it droops over, and it starts dying off. So it could be that. But, if it was like 2 weeks towards the end of June, I would say that's what's going on. But there's nothing you can really do about that. I would check the soil too because they may be drooping and not look great. But if the soil or the area is dry, don't think, oh, I can't water it. They had too much water. Just water again, and you hope for the best. All right. Yes. Well, the Rusted Garden Red is actually going to be out at the end of July, and I will be announcing the dates for that. I'm not end of July, strike that, end of June. It's only going to be out for a week. But the Rusted Garden Red will be fully advertised by me. I'll be doing probably a video on it. So they're coming back for just 1 week. And this is a unique color to the Rusted Garden through GreenStalk Garden. I actually think it's the best color out there. It looks really good. But they take these colors off, every other year or something like that. They bring them back for a period of time. So they're sort of limited in that way. I'm a second-year gardener. Congrats. I don't use a heating lamp. How can I increase my seedling stem size and strength before transplanting outdoors? You don't really need a heating lamp. I mean, at 70 degrees Fahrenheit in your house, things are pretty good. People use a heat mat sometimes. You definitely don't need a heat lamp. Either a heat mat or just temperature. The strength of the stem is usually more affected by the intensity of the light. So more intense light helps. And even a fan blowing the plants back and forth. You use a solar fan. The lights come on, solar fan turns on, wind blows, and it helps strengthen up the stem. I also use a very dilute, way cut down water-soluble fertilizer. That helps too. You can grow carrots in a grow bag. I would try and put them in a little bit more shadier area. Some seeds of the cool weather variety don't like to germinate when that top 2 inches is like 90 degrees Fahrenheit and warmer. So they don't germinate. I think carrots fall a little bit into that area. Spinach definitely does. But put them in a place where it's a little bit cooler and the carrot should be fine. A little bit shadier means the ground, the soil will be a little bit cooler. I get rid of spider mites using peppermint oil spray. It works really well. I sell it wherever you buy it. You just want to make sure you're getting peppermint oil, not extract. And it's 2 teaspoons in a gallon of water with some soap. Shake it up, spray the undersides of the leaves. I found that very effective against spider mites. I'm growing Kellogg's breakfast tomato and it's growing tall, but I've not gotten any flowers. They will start to flower. You can't really speed it up. I mean, getting back to our question, you might think, well, if I give it more potassium and more phosphorus, it's going to flower more. It's in your soil. They get what they need. It just might be a plant that takes longer for that. If you're pruning it, I would stop pruning it. Some plants, when you prune and try and do a single stem and stuff like that, it impacts flower production. It's just that variety. But I would just let the Kellogg do its thing, and it should start flowering on its own. All right, we're going to wrap up in 2 minutes. Last questions. Octavian, can I pretty much seed plant determinate tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers? Yeah, I was talking about that. So if you come on late, you've missed the talk about what you can plant. Maryland Zone 7, you're in 9 California. So you definitely can do determinate tomatoes. Wait. Let me just think. I always get confused. The higher the zone number, the warmer it is. If that's right. Determinate tomatoes for sure. I'm in zone 7. I can do determinate tomatoes now. I'm in zone 7. I can do cucumbers in June, in July, and in August. I can't really do peppers now. They'll grow and they'll start. I'm just not going to get a huge production because the cold rolls in. But if you're in a warmer place and it stays warmer, longer than it does here in Maryland, you can definitely do peppers. Neem oil is used for a chemical inside of it or in it called azadirachtin, and that gets sprayed on like your brassicas. It kills green worms. My stomach is growling. It kills chewing worms. So you spray the leaves of your plants. The insects that eat the leaf ingest the neem oil that has the azadirachtin. It shuts them down. It's a great organic spray for these chewing insects. Does baking soda spray help prevent and cure fungus on squash, cucumbers, and peppers? It does. Baking soda is an antifungal. It changes the pH on the leaves, makes the fungus not be able to reproduce. It does depend on the variety of fungus. Some of them may be immune to it, depending on what you get, but it is pretty effective. appreciated, Philly, for joining perk memberships and for supporting my seed shop. I have direct sowed seeds this year, and the temps outside were so unstable they didn't germinate. Resowed it works. Now it's over 105. How can we grow? It's really hard. I think we'll take that as the last question. It's really hard. So you have to kind of research more about the seeds that you're germinating. You can't really mulch because you need the seeds to break through the soil. The sun beating down does heat them up. You can water more often. But really what you would use for high heat is a shade cloth. And you can get a 50% shade cloth is great for what you're talking about. I use them. You put it over the soil. Enough sun gets in there to allow the plant to grow and germinate. And you have to use the shade cloth because I was just saying sometimes the high heat prevents seeds from germinating, or the plant sprout, it gets so hot it really heats up that top inch or two and the plant gets killed off. But shade cloth is probably the best way to manage it. All right, so I do the garden grounds every second and fourth Thursday at 11 a.m. The mentoring Q&A, ask whatever you want related to gardening. And I do kind of a light subject. If you like this format, I have perk memberships, $3.99. You have to find the join button, which can be a challenge. I apologize. Next to my videos or on my YouTube page. And I do this format 5 times a month. All right. I was just looking for a last question. All right. You guys have a great week. I'm going to go out and water my garden. It's going to get up to 90 degrees. Need to take off this flannel and just water and weed. See you guys next time.